you told me your grand plan for saving Gotham, the only thing that stopped me from calling the men in white coats was when you said that it wasn't about thrill-seeking.
It's not.
What would you call that?
Damn good television.
It's a miracle no one was killed.
I didn't have time to observe the rules of the road, Alfred.
You're getting lost inside this monster of yours.
I'm using this monster to help other people just like my father did.
For Thomas Wayne, helping others wasn't about proving anything to anyone, including himself.
It's Rachel, Alfred. She was dying. She's downstairs sedated. I need you to take her home.
Well, we both care for Rachel, sir. But what you're doing has to be beyond that. It can't be personal, or you're just a vigilante.
Is Fox still here?
Yes, sir.
We need to send these people away now.
Those are Bruce Wayne's guests out there, sir. You have a name to maintain.
I don't care about my name.
It's not just your name, sir. It's your father's name. And it's all that's left of him. Don't destroy it.
Providing the moral compass in Batman Begins, the familiar voice of the great Michael Caine, and having one of the most enduring and fascinating careers of any screen actor. Tonight's focus on Take Two, the movie program on Public Radio KCBX, and having that discussion with me, my fantastic friend, it's Bob Whiteford.
And of course, Yale, for me, the unbelievable, the incredible, the undeniable czar of film on the Central Coast. Of course, your friend and mine, King Vidor award-winning Jim Dee and Jimmy. We've got a really special Veterans Day show here for the folks at home. Just want to take a moment to give our thanks to our fighting men, past and present, for all they've done, and a lot of them for giving the ultimate sacrifice. And tonight we're going to do kind of a reprise on the Michael Caine show we did many years ago, and partly, Jimmy, because, as you'd said in the opening, one of the most prolific actors of our time, and oddly enough, a lot of his lost classics have reappeared over the last year or so. Films that I didn't think any of us would ever see again are now out there and available.
Well, believe it or not, it was in 2003 that Bob and I did our first tribute to Michael Caine, and at that time the film The Quiet American, I think, had just been released, and I think we were kind of thinking, well, here's a guy who's really been at it for a long time. Let's do a tribute. And here it is, 5 years later, and Michael Caine is still going strong at age, well, he's either 74 or 75. We could figure out that date here when we give you his birth date and some of the essential statistics on Michael Caine. But here's a guy who just keeps working. I think we've called Robert De Niro a blue-collar actor. He does great films. He does not so great films, but at least he keeps working. He's always out there doing his craft. And when we look at Michael Caine's filmography, I mean, 100-plus films. And then, interestingly enough, Bob, we should mention that Michael Caine really did cut his teeth on British television, on his filmography. There's a ton of appearances on British television. I don't know if any of these things would be available here in the States. I'm sure some would. But just noting, before he really kicked into being a great film actor, he was a staple on British television. So here's some of the basic statistics of Michael Caine. He was born March 14th, 1933 in London, and his real name, Maurice Joseph Micklewhite. And he's pretty tall, 6'2", and what's interesting about his name, or his nom de plume that he took on, Michael Caine, in 1954, he actually got the name Caine from the Caine Mutiny. I guess the name Maurice Micklewhite isn't quite the name you want to have as a great screen actor, so the Caine came from the Caine Mutiny. One of his first feature films going back to 1964, Zulu, and probably coming onto the scene as the rascally Alfie in his early career. But, we did open up our program tonight with a scene from Batman Begins, and what a quantum leap from early days of British television to perhaps some of the early kitchen sink stuff in Britain. And now he appears in one of the biggest franchises of all. Of course, he was in The Dark Knight as Alfred. And, here's a film that's going to make upwards to $600 million domestically here in the States. What a career. Michael Caine has pretty much seen it all, done it all, and he's still doing it.
Well, what's interesting about Michael Caine, Jimmy, amongst many things, is here's a guy who, when he got out of the Army, I think he was in the British Army in Korea, he went into acting, and he really, for years, was on the precipice of total starvation. I mean, I think from like 1953 to about 1964, 65, he was really struggling. I mean, he's sharing a flat with Terence Stamp, the great actor, sharing a flat with John Barry, the great music composer, because he's flat broke. I mean, for all we can kid him about, especially in his later years, making a lot of money in movies, and he's the first to say that, sometimes he'll just do it for the money. But really, when you get down to it, the cat paid his dues in a big way. And being a Londoner, he's tough, he's a survivor, he's clever, and with every setback in the early years, it seemed to just hone his craft. I mean, when he made his first big film, Zulu, in 1964, which incidentally had music by John Barry, people probably said, well, who is this guy? Who is this fellow that's just exploded on the screen? Because he's terrific. This is a great action-adventure film produced and starring really a great British or Welsh actor that doesn't get appreciated much these days, Stanley Baker. And then you find out, in retrospect, Michael Caine is 30 years old. He's been on television. He's been in movies like The Day the Earth Caught Fire, Carve Her Name with Pride, A Hill in Korea, just to name a few, where he had all these small bit parts and we didn't even know it was him. So he'd been working so hard to become an overnight sensation. It's really a unique story.
And, let's go back to one of Michael Caine's early successes. And I think, you're talking about the everyman quality of Michael Caine. I mean, whether he is kind of a rascal and kind of a amoral person in Alfie. Of course, we find him as the moral compass in the current Batman films as Alfred, steering Batman away from the vigilante life. But the thing about Michael Caine is he always seems comfortable, not only in his own skin, but in whatever character he's playing. And he can play a rough and tumble gangster, or he can play, a member of royalty and be wearing a tux and still be as classy as classy can be. So it's Michael Caine acting at its finest. He's always seems to be present and obviously taking on whatever character he is portraying, and convincingly so. Looking at some of his films, Bob, I can never catch him acting. It's one of those things where I can't find a bad Michael Caine performance because he is just so darn good.
And this even includes a plethora of bad films that he made, like Jaws: The Revenge. I remember there was a lot of jokes because I guess he was nominated, he was going to win the Academy Award for Hannah and Her Sisters, but he was on location in the West Indies somewhere, making Jaws the Revenge. You know, he's just soaking up the sun, enjoying. To him, it's just a beautiful, a paid-for vacation for him and his wife. And I think he's got a funny quote about the making of that pile of junk.
Well, you know, since you brought it up, here's the quote from Michael Caine regarding his appearance in Jaws the Revenge and not being at the Oscar ceremony to pick up his Oscar. In 1987, here's Michael Caine. "I have never seen it," regarding Jaws the Revenge, "but by all accounts, it is terrible. However, I have seen the house that it built, and it is terrific." I mean, it's great that he doesn't make any bones about it. I mean, he's a fine actor, and we already know that. But hey, the money's good on Jaws the Revenge. I mean, he's going to build a house and put the money to good use.
Absolutely. I mean, I think about another big-time pile of junk he made, which I would love to see again. It was Otto Preminger's Hurry Sundown with Jane Fonda. One of those crazy, late 1960s, tawdry, steamy soap operas set in the South, a South in flux with, you know, whites and blacks getting together, not always in a most healthy way, and it is just such a pile of junk. And all I could think of looking at this is, what's he doing in this? I mean, this is right around the time Otto Preminger starts to lose control of and starts making some unbelievably bad movies, of which Hurry Sundown is one of his worst, and there's Michael Caine right there. And I guess if I read this correctly, he was taught his American accent by Vivian Leigh.
That's right. Yeah, it says here his first American accent was in the film Hurry Sundown in 1967, taught the Southern drawl by Vivian Leigh, who told him to say four-door Ford all day long for weeks. I mean, that is amazing part of many actors, Michael Caine, who can take on pretty much any accent, and also taking on various British accents. I mean, it's a very different aristocratic accent when he is perhaps in maybe Dirty Rotten Scoundrels with Steve Martin. And then, of course, we'll play this clip from Alfie. You can't get much more of a Cockney accent than this. Here's Michael Caine in his classic film, Alfie.
I've told you before to be careful where you put your legs.
I was only trying to be helpful.
I can help myself. Hello? They never make these cars big enough, do they? Well, you all settled in? Right, we can begin. My name is...
Alfie?
Alfie. I suppose you think you're going to see the bleeding titles now? Well, you're not, so you can all relax.
Alfie!
Here, what time did your old man say he'd be waiting for you at the station?
Oh, never mind about him.
That's just who I am going to mind. Never spoil a good thing. That's a thing you women can't get into your heads. Come on now, enough's as good as a feast.
Oh, you soon changed your tune.
Well, that horn put me off. I hate a noise at a time like that. Hey, mate.
You don't forget your napkin.
I won't.
Do you know what I thought the first time I saw you put your handkerchief over your shoulder?
What?
Thought you were going to take out your fiddle and play it.
Well, I come from a musical family, don't I? A married woman, see? They're every one of them in need of a good laugh. It don't never strike their husbands. I always say, make a married woman laugh, and you're halfway there with her. Of course, it don't work with a single bird. Start you off on the wrong foot. You get one of them laughing, you won't get nothing else.
The great Michael Caine from Alfie. You know, I love that Cockney accent where the TH is like an F, you know, whiff, or like when we say Keith Richards, it's Keith.
Keith,
Keith Richards. But Alfie, a great success for Michael Caine. And as we hear in that clip, totally comfortable, totally on top of his game, and in command of the situation, and knowing how to read married women and single women perfectly.
And, you know, Jim, I think along with Harry Palmer, which was a character he played around the same time in Funeral in Berlin, Ipcress File, and Billion Dollar Brain, these are the films that, to me, are always going to resonate Michael Caine, because he's kind of the cocksure world's, what would you call it? He's like a street smart Londoner. Which makes him one of the smartest people in the world, and he doesn't have to go to school. He's just born knowing how to, how he uses his abilities, his street smarts just to basically bed women. And it's just, this film is so hilarious because it's got such the great asides where he stops and talks to the audience about what he's thinking and feeling, a device I've not seen very often in films, on occasion, but I've never seen it done better than in Alfie, because Michael Caine is just, he's dry, he's brilliant, he's insightful, and he's somewhat cruel and shallow, and he doesn't hide that aspect to himself.
On screen and off screen. No, we love you, Michael. You did make the money for Jaws Revenge, but that's okay. That's okay with us.
Absolutely.
One thing we should mention, too, Bob, is somehow Michael Caine, when you mentioned the Ipcris file, I remember when the movie came out, and here's a guy wearing horn-rimmed glasses. And, can you imagine Sean Connery in the Bond films wearing, tortoiseshell glasses, or, his toupee is off or something, let's just say. But here is Michael Caine in a lot of his early films with those horn-rimmed glasses, and he looks great. I mean, or maybe then he looked kind of bookwormish or something, but somehow he could wear those glasses and still be the very cool Michael Caine.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because Harry Palmer is just the exact opposite of James Bond. Yet, what they have in common, their thread is they're uniquely British. They're very good at what they do. That's kind of where they're professionals, but that's kind of where the similarities end, because Michael Caine's Harry Palmer is a British soldier who was a little shady, and he got caught and impressed into the Secret Service. He's always got to fill out torturous amounts of tedious paperwork, but there always seems to be a bird in a miniskirt close by to kind of give him an interest. The Harry Palmer films are wonderful. It's swinging London, definitely downscale, but really in many ways more true to the heart and the core and the soul of it all. And those are great films.
They are. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but what we do want to delve into now is what Bob talked about at the beginning of the show. And Michael Caine's filmography is so extensive, but there are a number of his films that have been kind of in limbo. And of course, you said there were some that you thought would never see the light of day. Now, interestingly, also about Michael Caine's career is we were talking about how prolific and how much he works. I mean, on average, he was making like 3 and 4 films a year. And we go to 1967, where 3 films of his have emerged on DVD. And as you said, Bob, these you didn't know if they were ever going to come out. And 3 fine films. One, well, the first one we're going to be talking about is the film adaptation of John Fowles' novel, The Magus. And one of my favorite books of all time, and in order to capture the mysterious quality of the book, I didn't think any film could do it, even though casting Michael Caine as the main main teacher, his last name is Irf, and Anthony Quinn as Conscious, great casting, but again, the quality of this book I don't think could have been captured by any director. Maybe David Lynch could have done it. Maybe. But I mean, it's a nice try, but still, The Magus in 1967 is one of the films that has just seen the light of day on DVD.
Well, you know what's interesting about this, Jimmy? Back in the early days of Insomniac, so many people came in wanting to see this film when we first opened, and our credo was that we would have unusual, different films you wouldn't find everywhere. And this was overwhelmingly the film, this and Song of the South were the films people wanted to see that they couldn't see. And for many years, it would seem that frankly, this film would never see the light of day. I was familiar with the book. I'd read a lot about the film, and the film has garnered either great reviews or terrible reviews. And finally, the people from 20th Century Fox, I guess they got their hands through one of these weird mergers where now 20th Century Fox is releasing films that were in the United Artists Vault. It's very peculiar. I don't understand it. And listeners to this program will know that we're not big fans of this kind of stuff. However, in this case, what happened was 20th Century Fox released several Michael Caine films that had never been seen in decades, and The Magus is one of them. And I actually own a copy of this now. I can't call this film exactly a success. In many ways, it reminds me a lot of the excess, 60s excess, where you have these weird films and done by big studios, and you're wondering if anybody is really, who's running this dog and pony show? You know, it just seems like it's a little out of control, and there's no one there to quite rein it in. I think of the aforementioned Hurry Sundown. Myra Breckenridge comes to mind as well. But still, I would recommend this to people who have read the book, because the author, was it
John Fowles.
John Fowles wrote the screenplay to this as well. I think it's the only screenplay he ever wrote, and maybe for good reason, I don't know. But even in failure, sometimes a film brings something to the table that still makes it interesting to watch. And The Magus is got some very interesting possibilities to it. Like you said, Jimmy, tough book to film, and it doesn't quite come off, but it's still brilliantly photographed. The Greek islands look spectacular, as does Candice Bergen, and it's definitely worth a look.
We're talking about The Magus, which has been re-released, not re-released, but pretty much released for the first time on DVD, featuring Anthony Quinn and the great Michael Caine. And Bob, just one more footnote on transferring the book to the film. I mean, this is a book with ambiguity, and you don't really know what's going on, and the main character being sucked into this intrigue and some sexual intrigue as well, where you really, the reader is just as stumped as the main character, and that's the beauty of the book, because you're just going along and you're just going, what is really happening here? And to capture that in the film, I don't think it really worked, but a good try. Here's a clip from The Magus. It's Anthony Quinn welcoming the character played by Michael Caine, and hopefully we can get a little bit of mystery from this clip. This is from The Magus.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I found this on the...
I chose well. I built on the site of a medieval chapel.
Very nice. I came to return this.
You came here to meet me. Please, life is short. My name is Conscious.
My name is Earth, from the school. I find life long.
Oh, tea is ready.
How did you know
There's
I
a
was...
poem of the Tang Dynasty. Here on the frontier, there are falling leaves. Although my neighbors are all barbarians, and you're 1,000 miles away, there are always 2 cups on my table.
Full of China tea.
The best Darjeeling.
I believe you knew Williamson.
Oh, my housekeeper, Maria. My manservant, Andreas. Please.
You did know him, didn't you?
Enjoy your tea, please.
And so it goes, a scene from the Magus with Anthony Quinn as the mysterious Conscious and as Earth, the great Michael Caine. And as you can probably tell from that clip, here is Michael Caine being drawn into something that is beyond him. And it seems that Conscious is already know that he's going to be showing up at his door and having tea with him, and so the film goes. There's a very interesting film, very happy to see it on DVD and, brought out of the ether. And as Bob mentioned, that was one that we didn't think was going to see the light of day or the light of your TV screen playing the DVD.
Well, I got to say, they've done a beautiful job. The film is restored in its original widescreen aspect ratio. Visually, it's stunning. The Greek Isles have never looked more beautiful. And you juxtapose that against the mystery and ambiguity that kind of gets so confusing. If nothing else, you just touch base with the Greek Isles when you get confused in this film.
Now, also in 1967, in addition to the Magus, Michael Caine made another film. And, Bob, this is really a special discovery. The film is called Deadfall. And, boy, to our listeners, if you're a fan of the Sean Connery James Bond films, and we're talking about perhaps the first four, Dr. No, From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, and Thunderball, with that John Barry score, this film fits right in with those films. It sounds like a Bond film. It looks like one. The intrigue, even though this isn't a Bond film, we do have the sturdy Michael Caine as what do we call him in this?
Kind of a professional burglar. Top end, of course. Yeah. Only the finer items are available for him to steal. It's shot in Spain. When we did the first show, Jimmy, I was not even aware this film existed. I'd never seen it, never heard anything about it. And this film was released along with The Magus and Play Dirty, a film we're going to talk about in a minute. And this is a really slick and fascinating, well-acted mystery starring Michael Caine at the absolute early height, his early pinnacle. And it features the great British actor Eric Portman in a role as his partner / adversary. It's kind of intriguing. This couple, a much older man played by Eric Portman, who is obviously gay, and his much younger, beautiful wife, played by an Italian actress whose name I cannot pronounce. I'm not even going to try. Approach Michael Caine about robbing a certain fellow who he's already in the process of casing. And they decide to join forces. And this has got one of the best heist scenes in film. It's right up there with Re-Fi-Fi. However, in Re-Fi-Fi, when they break in and they're robbing the diamonds, and there's no sound at all, there's no dialogue, no nothing. This safe heist in this beautiful Spanish castle is done to the backdrop of this John Barry concert with this great woman flamenco guitarist as the backdrop to it. It's just really well done. This film was directed by a great British filmmaker a lot of people don't know much about. His name was Brian Forbes. He started out as an actor, a contemporary of Caine's. I gotta say, Brian Forbes, when you see him in the movies in the 50s, he is one of the greatest pompadours I've ever seen. It's right there with Lawrence Harvey's, just wonderfully so. This is a chap we could definitely talk a lot about on our own. He did direct He did do the original Stepford Wives, so if you're familiar with that film, go back and check some of the other films this fella's done. He's really good. And it also features Nanette Newman in an early role, who was Brian Forbes' wife in real life. This is one of the better 1960s, sophisticated, kind of sexy, exotic mystery films. And it was lost for decades.
Here's a scene from Deadfall. It's Michael Caine being employed and rather sucked into the heist that Bob was talking about from Deadfall.
You know my wife, of course.
Yes. You might want to burn this. Not one of my better efforts.
Thank you.
Yes?
Yes, thank you.
And?
Just water, no ice.
You need this climate. How very British of you.
To the core.
However you take it, I don't think the good Dr. Delgado would approve. Say this in the past. I'm not drinking to that.
What are we drinking to?
Oh, I think to the happy thought that you haven't made a mistake in coming here to meet us. Of course, you're a difficult man to get to meet.
Not difficult enough, it seems.
Well, we all like the thrill of the chase, don't we?
No, as a matter of fact. Personally, I think it's overrated. But I'm here, so what's the proposition?
This isn't a shakedown, Henry. May I call you Henry? Nothing as crude as that.
Oh, good. So what is it?
Just a discussion.
Darling, can I have my drink?
Just a friendly discussion between three people who share, or could share, certain common interests. Of course, I must admit that we have a slight edge on you. We've studied your career very closely, whereas possibly our own isn't quite so familiar to you. Would you like me to be more specific?
Why not? It's a long way to come for gossip.
Well,
From Deadfall from 1968, Michael Caine, and Resurrected from Obscurity. Nice to have it out on DVD. And we were talking about how close this is to those early Sean Connery, James Bond films. The title song, sung by Shirley Bassey, who also sung Goldfinger. So seek this one out. It's a treat, especially if you're a Bond fan of those early Bond films.
Absolutely.
You are in tune with Take Two, the movie program on public radio, KCBX and KCBX HD1 San Luis Obispo, KSBX Santa Barbara. We are streaming worldwide at kcbx.org. Bob and I will be back with more of Michael Caine in just a moment.
You're listening to Take Two on public radio, KCBX San Luis Obispo, KSBX Santa Barbara, streaming at kcbx.org, and you can write to us at movies@kcbx.org.
Funds are provided by Charter Communications, offering home telephone service with digital cable and high-speed internet. There's no equipment to buy, and installation is included. 1-888-438-2427.
Funds for Take Two are also provided by the Chumash Casino Resort in the Santa Ynez Valley, presenting entertainment every Thursday night, including country music, rock and roll, and more. Details at chumashcasino.com.
We're back on Take Two, the movie program on Public Radio KCBX. My name is Jim Dee. I'm here with my good friend Bob Whiteford. About 5 years ago, we did a tribute to Michael Caine, thinking, he might have been, close to the end of his career, and how wrong we were. 5 years later, Michael Caine still going strong, and certainly worth looking back at his great filmography. And we've been resurrecting, or actually talking about some of the films that have been resurrected and finally made available. And we still go back to 1968, the three films that have emerged from obscurity, and we're really happy about it, are The Magus, Deadfall, and one more that he also made in 1968 called Play Dirty. And, Bob, this film, almost, I didn't watch all of it. You've seen it all, but it almost had kind of a Dirty Dozen feel in the fact that here is Michael Caine having to be a commander of a group of soldiers. But, the oil aspect of this is very interesting. The Middle Eastern oil aspect of this film from Play Dirty.
Jimmy, I had seen this film, I think, on late night television once. Back in maybe the early 70s. We're going back 35 years, maybe. I'm being generous. And the movie blew me away the first time I saw it. And it left an impression on me for a long time. You're right. It's very much like a Dirty Dozen type film, except none of these characters there's nothing likable about any of them. They, as the name implies, play dirty. These are basically criminals. Michael Caine is an oil man who's been, drafted by the British Army to handle oil logistics in North Africa in World War II. And he's selected to lead a band of cutthroat commandos behind the lines to blow up a German oil depot. Of course, what's going on is a lot of duplicity and betrayal on their side. They're being sent out with the idea that they'll catch it from the Germans so the real commandos can slip through and untouched and hit the target. We have a lot of betrayal, we have a lot of intrigue, we have a lot of violence, we have a lot of brutal action. It's an action film, but it seems to have a message about oil, which maybe in Europe in the late 60s made sense because they were suffering from an oil embargo from the Suez. Back then, I think gas was $4 a gallon in Britain in 1966, 67, kind of where we are now. And, this film just seemed to have so much, it had like a subtle point underneath about how when you deal with oil, you don't just physically get dirty, you have to play dirty to control it. And this film I highly recommend for lovers of action films from the 60s, like The Dirty Dozen. Dirty Dozen would be one. Yeah, Battle of the Bulge, any of that stuff. Those big Devil's Brigade. This film fits right in with them in terms of action, but it also has a subtle message which I think would play well with today's audiences.
Here is the very timely Play Dirty. It's a scene with Michael Caine getting his orders and about that Middle Eastern oil.
You sent for me, sir?
Yes. Captain Douglas is on loan from British Petroleum. He's worked for 7 years as a field engineer with the Anglo-Iranian branch.
So, you know the desert?
Yes. A little.
Excellent.
Captain Atwood here is from HQ Special Forces. They want an officer with some experience of fuel supply to take command of a rather unusual unit.
May I point out, sir, that the arrangement with British Petroleum was that I stay in port areas.
What are you wearing?
British uniform, sir.
British Petroleum uniform?
No, sir.
Good. Captain Atwood will give you the Brigadier's orders. He's your man.
It's a scene from Play Dirty, a film rescued from obscurity, now available on DVD, featuring a great Michael Caine performance, and definitely recommended by both of us here on Take Two.
I might also recommend, it's got great performances by two Nigels. Nigel Green, the always wonderful Nigel Green, with those great eyebrows. I just don't know how he does it, but he's wonderful in this movie. I got to tell you, there's one scene where he's being chastised by a general, and Nigel Green's in his uniform, yet he's wearing these nutty sandals. It's really a riot. And it also features Nigel Davenport as Michael Caine's second in command, who really knows how to play dirty. Very good film, and so pleased that it was resurrected and is now out there for people to see.
And we'll give you those three titles again if those of you who are Michael Caine aficionados: The Magus, Deadfall, and Play Dirty. Let's move on now, Bob. I mean, here's a great film that holds up very well. Is really has an edge to it. I still think it holds up amazingly well. And we are going back to 1971, Get Carter, Michael Caine as Jack Carter. And we're talking about gang warfare here. And, it's, I was watching some of this, when we was doing the clips of this film. And boy, this is a hard-edged film. And as we talk about the chameleon Michael Caine, where he can play royalty or a down and dirty mobster, he's playing the latter in this great film called Get Carter from 1971.
You know, Jimmy, I think Get Carter is right up there with The Long Good Friday as the best British gangster movies ever made.
Yes.
And the collaboration of director Mike Hodges, who would go on to do such films as The Croupier and I'll Sleep When I'm Dead with Clive Owen, which are also really good films. This is gritty, tough. It's as tough as anything Martin Scorsese's done. It's just that it takes place in, I can't remember the city. Was it Manchester?
I believe it's Manchester.
Yeah, which is a great backdrop to this film. I mean, it's a grimy, brutally desolate place, and Michael Caine is just adding a whole new dimension in this film. He's not the good-natured Cockney in this one. He's a professional criminal out for revenge for the death of his brother, and he'll stop at nothing to get the guys who did it. And this is, forget the crappy remake with Sylvester Stallone. And Michael Caine was in that too. I'm sure the money was good. This is the McCoy. This is a great film.
The real McCoy. Here's Bob's setup is great. Here is a clip, Michael Caine in the film Get Carter.
We don't want you to go up the north, Jack.
No?
You work for us, Jack. You know we're connected with the Newcastle mob. I'd hate you to screw it up. What's that, a python? What you going for?
To find out what happened.
Look, your brother's dead and gone. They're hard nuts up there, Jack. They won't take kindly to someone from London poking his nose in.
Too bad.
Remember, they're killers, just like you.
The police seem satisfied.
Since when was that good enough?
Think again, Jack.
I will.
It's a scene from Get Carter. Both Bob and I highly recommend it. It's tough as nails and a fantastic performance by Michael Caine. It's from 1971. Well, all the while, Michael Caine is working, and we're not listing all of the films in his filmography, but we move up to 1972, a year later, where we also find Michael Caine at this time, still early in his career, although, like you said, he's hitting some high points and achieving stardom, but playing against the great Laurence Olivier in the wonderful cat and mouse film called Sleuth. And if you haven't seen Sleuth, the original, shall we say, because only a couple of years ago, Michael Caine remade Sleuth with Jude Law. Now, I haven't seen the remake, but I'll still go with the original as far as incredible acting based on a stage play, and both Laurence Olivier and Michael Caine, incredible adversaries in this wonderfully twisty, turny film. Sleuth.
Well, Jimmy, it's just the two of them. And when I first approached this film, it's like the idea of just watching two people, it just didn't seem very interesting to me. But these two locking horns, it's acting. This is what acting is all about. Great acting. Sir Laurence Olivier and Michael Caine locking horns in Sleuth. I mean, the remake is not bad. And what's interesting is now Michael Caine in the later version plays the Laurence Olivier part, and Jude Law plays the old Michael Caine part. The remake is not bad. Jude Law and Michael Caine have good chemistry between them, but this is a bird of a different feather. And oddly enough now, folks, out there, if you want to see this film, it's very hard to come by. The original Sleuth, for whatever reason, is not readily available.
Oh, boy.
I used to know a place where you could get it, but I don't know it anymore.
Yeah, I did too. Well, here we go. Here's Laurence Olivier and Michael Caine. It's a cat and mouse game where, at parts of the film, one is the cat, and later in the film, another one is the cat. But just here's some great interplay. This is from 1972, Sleuth.
There's an open season all the year round for some creatures, seducers and wife-stealers, for example.
Now, that's a bad Italian joke.
You should know it. Your country of origin, is it not?
No, actually, I'm English. I was born here, in England.
Where are you now? Actually. What, in dear old cradle of the parliamentary system, whose screws my wife merits a large pink gin, England?
Sense of humour, fair play, England, I mean.
Oh, don't you believe it? That's the way a foreigner talks. What he really thinks in private is filthy, wet country, ugly, red, cold men who don't know how to treat their pale, pink, cool women.
Well, what brought all this on then? What are you doing with that gun?
Pretty obviously pointing it at you.
I can see that, but why?
Because I'm a-gonna kill you.
You are gonna kill me? Jesus! Here we go again with another one of your games.
Another one? No. It's the same one. We've been playing it all the evening. It's called You're Going to Die and No One Will Suspect Murder.
Scene from Sleuth, and not only the interplay between these two great actors, Laurence Olivier and Michael Caine, the writing in this film is just it just crackles, and the twists and turns are in there. We highly recommend this film, and Bob, I'm sorry to hear that this film is hard to find. Hopefully you can perhaps go on the internet and seek out Sleuth. It's a great film to see these two actors at the top of their game.
Absolutely.
Well, we come now to a film we've talked about many times on this program. Since we're going to talk about Michael Caine, we must include it. One of my all-time favorite films. It's The Man Who Would Be King, and easily one of the greatest team-ups that two guys should have teamed up more times on screen. We're talking about Michael Caine and Sean Connery. And this film, directed by the great John Huston in 1975, it is Michael Caine as Peachy Carnahan, two wonderful soldiers and swindlers who want to become kings. And folks, we've talked about this film on every chance we get. I know that I have.
Absolutely. Me too.
one of my all-time favorite films, and seek it out. It's worth seeing more than once. And the interplay, we talked about how great Michael Caine and Sir Laurence Olivier are, but my goodness, Sean Connery and Michael Caine proved to be such an incredible pair on screen. I still wish they would do something together. They're not too old to do it, but the camaraderie in this film is something else. Also, the fact that it's directed by John Huston, I also think of this as the ultimate guy picture. You could team this up with The Treasure of Sierra Madre and have the greatest guy double feature ever. But The Man Who Would Be King, what more can we say, Bob? What a film.
Adaptation of the great Rudyard Kipling story. You have Christopher Plummer as Rudyard Kipling in this. I think we had talked about this film several years ago in depth when our involvement in Afghanistan was beginning, and it's worth noting that the film touches upon the fact that Alexander the Great had been there, and that this is, the 19th century, the British Empire, they were the most powerful at that point. These two chaps are going there to basically become kings, loot the country of its riches, and it's an audacious plan. And as much as we might despise imperialism, we can't help but love these two blackguards. When you were talking earlier, Jimmy, I had like a minor epiphany here listening to you. This is the only film they've been in together, teamed together. Now, they were both in A Bridge Too Far, Richard Attenborough's war movie about the invasion of Holland from 1977, but they're not in any scenes together. The teaming is so natural and so right, and they are great together. And under the wonderful direction of John Huston, this is probably one of the great adventure films of all time.
I agree.
I love this film dearly.
Here is a scene from one of our favorite films. It's Sean Connery and Michael Caine in The Man Who Would Be King.
And now, sir, let me introduce you to Brother Peachy Carnahan, which is him, and Brother Daniel Dravert, which is I. The less said about our professions, the better, for we have been most things in our time. We've been all over India. We know her cities, her jungles, her jails, and her palaces. And we have decided that she isn't big enough for such as we.
Yes, that's what I understood the commissioner to say.
Therefore, we are going away to another place, where a man isn't crowded and can come into his own. We're not little men, so we're going away to be kings. Kings of Kafiristan.
Oh, Kafiristan.
We hear they have 32 idols there, so we'll be the 33rd and 34th.
It's a place of warring tribes, which is to say, a land of opportunity for such as we, who know how to train men and lead them into battle.
We'll go there. We'll say to any chief we can find, do you want to vanquish your foes? Of course he'll say, go to it. We'll fight for him, make him king, then we'll subvert that king. We'll seize his royal throne and loot the country 4 ways from Sunday.
How's that for a plan?
The Man Who Would Be King, the two scoundrels, the two imperialists, Bob. I never thought of them as imperialists, but of course they are. But, the great thing to bring up about this film and the next film we're going to be talking about is the versatility of these actors, or should we say Michael Caine, and either in drama or comedy. I mean, this film is not only dramatic and incredible and epic in scope, but it's really funny and humanly funny in the fact that the foibles of these two guys, I mean, you're following these two guys through thick and thin, and there are incredible moments, there's profound moments, and there's also very funny moments. The Man Who Would Be King, easily one of our most highly recommended films here on Take Two. Well, we were talking about Michael Caine, starring in some not-so-great films. There were some great ones after The Man Who Would Be King. The Eagle Has Landed in 1976, Bridge Too Far in 77. He also made an appearance in The Swarm in 1978, Beyond the Poseidon Adventure. Maybe you'd like to forget
with
that
Telly Savalas.
A number of others, but also working in some good films. Death Trap, another interesting stage adaptation in 1982. And a wonderful film that we'd like to bring up with the wonderful Julie Walters in 1983, Educating Rita. Michael Caine as a professor and taking on the, shall we say, less than refined Julie Walters in this wonderful film.
Kind of an off take of Pygmalion, yet he's kind of an alcoholic, curmudgeonly professor, and she brings so much vitality to this film. They're great together. It's a great tandem. Caine in his kind of drunken, bitter aloofness, and her in her kind of naive wonder, wanting to learn, and how eventually she breaks down that crusty shell of his. The scene where she gives him a haircut is great. And this is what I would consider one of the great little movies.
Yes.
You know, where Man Who Would Be King was big and epic in its sweep. Educating Rita is kind of a small picture. It's just a couple of people, just human beings we've all known, kind of coming together and forming a bond. You think it's funny because there could almost be a romance there, and it's better that there isn't.
Yes.
And it's far more profound that way. This is a wonderful little movie, and I would hope people would go out and find this again. It's probably a film that's been kind of lost now.
Here's a scene from Educating Rita, and it's Julie Walters as the cantankerous student. It is Michael Caine as the teacher, and they're talking about literature.
Sit down.
I love walking around this room.
Rita, don't you ever just come into a room and sit down?
I don't want to sit down. I love that lawn down there. All the proper students.
What? Oh, yeah, yes. Yeah. Now, this essay you wrote for me.
It was crap.
No, the thing is, Rita, how the hell can you write an essay on E.M. Forster with almost total reference to Harold Robbins?
Oh, well, you said bring in other authors. Reference to other works will impress the examiners, you said.
Yes, I said refer to other works, but I doubt if the examiner, God bless him, will have read Where Love Has Gone.
Well, that's his hard luck, isn't it?
Yes, and it'll be your hard luck when he fails your paper. Because that's what he would do if you wrote like this during an exam.
Oh, that's prime. Now, there's justice for you. I get failed because I'm more well-read than the friggin' examiner.
Devouring pulp fiction is not being well-read.
I thought reading was supposed to be good for one.
It is, but you have to be selective. I mean, in your favor here, you've mentioned Sons and Lovers, but I mean, this is all over the place.
Oh.
It's very subjective and highly sentimental.
Yeah, crap.
No, there are things that are worthy in it. But the main thing is, Rita, is if you're going to learn criticism, you have to begin to discipline that mind of yours.
Are you married?
What?
Are you? What's your wife like?
For God's sake, woman, is my wife at all relevant?
Well, you should know. You married her.
Then, in that case, she is not relevant. I haven't seen her in a long time. We split up. All right?
I'm sorry.
Why are you sorry?
I'm sorry for asking. For being nosy.
Okay, fine. Now, the thing about how
Why did you split up?
Why don't you take notes? Then when you have to answer a question on Forster, you can treat the examiner to an essay called Frank's Marriage.
Go away. I'm only interested.
We split up, Rita, because of poetry.
You what?
One day, my wife explained to me that for the past 15 years, my output as a poet had dealt entirely with a part of our lives in which we discovered each other.
Are you a poet?
Was. And so to give me something new to write about, she left me. A very noble woman, my wife. She left me for the good of literature. And remarkably, it worked.
It's a scene from Educating Rita, the wonderful Michael Caine, and the extremely wonderful Julie Walters. It's a great film for you to seek out. You know, Bob, we could have actually done a two-parter on Michael Caine going over his incredible filmography. He did win an Oscar for Hannah and Her Sisters, the Woody Allen film, as well as The Cider House Rules. And we should say that I'm sure he has a place in the upcoming Batman films, but he has actually already completed another film to be released this year in 2008 called Is There Anybody There? And also in pre-production, another film to be released in 2009, Harry Brown is the title of the film. So Michael Caine, we wish you a long life and a long, ever-enduring career. It's been a real pleasure to go back over some of these great Michael Caine films, especially those ones that have been uncovered. And what a pleasure to talk about this great British actor.
Absolutely. And you know what? I still like X, Y, and Z. I don't care how big a piece of junk it is. I always got a kick out of that.
Our thanks to Hank, our great projectionist. We'll be back again next week with another edition of Take Two.